So today, we're going to crack open a masterclass in global expansion. And we found it in a pretty unexpected place, a century-old manual for building a worldwide movement. Now, while its purpose was religious, what's inside is an absolutely fascinating, super detailed strategic playbook.
And that really gets to our core question. How do you build a global movement from the ground up? Well, it turns out a pretty solid blueprint can be found right here, in this surprisingly candid 100-year-old guide to evangelism. So let's dive in.
All right, so where does any big project start? With a mission, right? But in this playbook, it's not just a goal. It's framed as a divine commission. And that idea, that phrase, it defines the entire operation and the incredible, almost unbelievable scale of the challenge.
So what was driving all of this? Just pure, raw urgency. This wasn't about growth for the sake of growth. No, it was rooted in this deep belief that a global catastrophe was just around the corner. I mean, listen to this quote. This tells you they weren't just trying to market an idea. They genuinely believed they were saving the world from the brink of disaster.
And to really get a sense of that urgency, the people behind this believed that not even 1,000th of the work that needed to be done was actually getting done. Think about that. 1/1,000th. Imagine running a company today and being told you're only hitting 0.1% of what needs to get done. That kind of pressure? Wow. That creates this incredible, almost desperate push to expand.
So, what was the ultimate goal then? Nothing short of total global reach. The vision was to create a chain of influence that would, in their own words, belt the earth. It's all about constantly annexing new territory, growing their vineyard, as they called it, until it covered the entire planet. That is some serious ambition.
Okay, so you've got this massive mission. Now you need people to carry it out, right? So this next part of the playbook is basically the HR manual. It gets super specific about the ideal person for the job, the perfect messenger.
And look at this. The playbook draws a really sharp line in the sand. On one side, you need someone humble, earnest, focused. The message is the star, not them. But on the other side, absolutely no theatrical types. No one who's just trying to be sensational or famous. They even call out the celebrity preachers of the day by name. It's kind of like a modern brand saying, we don't want influencers. The big takeaway is clear. It's all about substance over style.
And get this. This is one of my favorite details. The manual explicitly warns against jolly ministers. Can you believe that? The thinking was, a happy-go-lucky personality just didn't match the serious world-dooming message they were delivering. The messenger had to be the message, and this was a very, very serious brand. And the branding gets even more granular. Messengers were actually forbidden from using the title Reverend. Why? Well, the logic was that the title belongs to God and God alone. If a human uses it, it's basically a stolen word. I mean, that level of detail, it just shows you how meticulously they were crafting every single part of their public image.
All right, so we've got the mission and we've got the messenger. Now for the really juicy part, the actual how-to. This section is the tactical playbook, the nuts and bolts of how to win people over. You could almost read it like a modern marketing and sales plan.
And here it is, what we'd probably call a conversion funnel today. It's laid out in 3 crystal clear, non-negotiable steps: repentance, then faith, then baptism. There's no gray area here. It's a very clear, systematic path that every single potential convert had to walk down.
Now, when it came to any kind of public effort, there was one golden rule: authenticity above all else. The playbook flat out banned anything that could feel like a show or just cheap entertainment.
And this quote, it just drives that point home so powerfully. Not one jot or tittle of anything theatrical. That's about as absolute as you can get. The goal wasn't to put on a performance, it was to create a sacred, heavenly experience. And really, that's what set them apart from all the other flashy, sensationalist preachers of the time.
So how did they get the word out? Well, they used what we'd call a multi-channel strategy. You had public sermons and the press. That was kind of like their top-of-funnel marketing, right? Building broad awareness. But the real secret sauce, the thing they said was most essential, was that personal, one-on-one, house-to-house work. They knew that true commitment, real conversion, doesn't happen from a stage. It happens in a conversation. Okay, so any good strategy needs to know its audience, right? And this is where the playbook gets surprisingly modern. It shows this really sophisticated approach to market segmentation with custom-built strategies for reaching all the different parts of society.
I mean, just take a look at this table. This is pure strategic thinking. For the rich and powerful, the pitch is about philanthropy and influence. For other ministers, it's a softer, non-confrontational approach. Just study the text for yourself. They even identify the middle class as the most receptive target market. And there are specific plans for reaching Catholics and even tourists. This is not a one-size-fits-all message. This is targeted communication, 100 years ago.
So after all this work, what does winning actually look like? What's the end game? Well, the final section of the playbook paints this really vivid, really dramatic picture of what ultimate success looks like and the final push to get there.
What I love about this timeline is the incredible sense of scale it creates. It frames the entire project not as some short-term campaign, but as the culmination of this huge, cosmic procession of the ages. It made every small daily task feel like it had immense historical weight. And you see that phrase again, the final movements would be rapid ones. It's that constant, driving sense of urgency coming back.
And here's how it all culminates in this dramatic final act. A loud cry goes global, reaching thousands of people who've never heard anything like it before. The work gets finished with mighty power. But it's not all smooth sailing. The playbook talks about fiery trials that sift the membership, a real test of commitment. And then, finally, it all ends in a speedy, triumphant climax, a really powerful and motivating vision of victory.
So what's the big takeaway here? At the end of the day, if you peel back the specific theology, what you're left with is an insightful, powerful blueprint for mass communication. It covers everything from brand identity to end-game strategy. Which leaves us with one big question to think about. How many of these 100-year-old principles, that intense urgency, that commitment to authenticity, a clear mission, and really understanding your audience, how many of those are still fundamental to building any kind of global movement today?